Right, if you guys are ready, we can get started.
Thank you so much.
Well, good morning, everybody, and a good day to everybody who's beaming in from around the world. As you all know, this is the presidential CIB presidential seminar series that we broadcast from Purdue University. So it's good to have all of you back. And as you would recall, the last 2 semesters, our theme was distinguished women researchers in the built environment. And this semester, our theme is going to be global construction and the impact that is having on the different aspects, different problems, different issues that the construction industry is facing. So we are starting off. We have an excellent lineup of speakers for the next 12 seminars. And we are starting off with our A team from Purdue University, and that is Professor Behzad Ismaili and a PhD scholar Haley Seo, Hewon Haley Seo. So let me give a quick overview of their achievements so far, and then I'll hand it over to the two of them. So Professor Ismaili is, of course, many of you know him as a faculty in industrial engineering and School of Civil and Construction Engineering. His research focuses on making breakthrough discoveries in human factor-related theories and applying data analytics to advance occupational safety in the construction industry. His research group, Safety, Risk Management, and Decision-Making, has established a sustainable research program that charts his research course and paves the way for the future growth of his students and colleagues. His research group's motto is to set the standard in quality and innovation. Dr. Ismaili's research in this field has been funded by various national and local funding agencies, including the National Science Foundation, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH, Construction Industry Institute, Nebraska Department of Transportation, Virginia Department of Transportation, Indiana Department of Transportation, Department of Labor, and the Center for Construction Research and Training. Our PhD scholar, Hewon Haley Seo, is a PhD student in civil engineering at Purdue University. She's specializing in construction safety and advanced work packaging. She has been involved in construction safety research since her master's degree in civil engineering, where she focused on motion data-driven biomechanical assessment to identify and evaluate ergonomic interventions in construction work. Currently, she is actively working on the neuroergonomic impact of exoskeletons in the construction domain as part of an NSF project. Additionally, she has been a leading graduate student on the Construction Industry Institute project for the past 2 years, investigating organizational culture in the advanced work packaging domain to enhance project success as part of the RT405 team. And that was in collaboration with Industrial Organization Psychology team from Purdue. She was recently honored with the Best Student Award of 2024 from the CII and invited to an international seminar held in South Korea to share the results from the RT405 team. With that said, let me hand it over to Professor Ismaili and Hewon Seo. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Professor Hasluck. Really appreciate it for wonderful introduction. Oh, sure. Thank you so much, Professor Hasluck, for wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. And today, I'm very honored to be here and also have Haley Seo with me for this presentation. The reason we selected this project, Cultivating Success, that is funded by CII to improve adoption of AWP in construction projects, is that when I joined Purdue 2 years ago, we just received the funding, and I contacted Professor Hasluck because he has done multiple research with CII, and I got some advice and guidance and mentorship how to complete this project. And after 2 years of hard working, we finally completed this project, and we thought it's a good time to share the result of this study. So if I move forward. Okay, so our team consisted of two academic teams. One of them is from organizational psychology, Dr. Frankie Kong and Dante Bruno, and myself and Haley from civil engineering. Also, we had a chair and co-chair from industry who were helping us on this project. And one of the strengths of this study was the very strong industry advisory board that we have. And you can see just the name of the companies, for example, Autodesk, Chevron, Hilti, U.S. Department of State, Black & Veatch, and ExxonMobil, and many other large companies who were part of our industry advisory board who help us in this project. And the goal of the study was to understand how we can leverage culture to better implement AWP projects. And AWP, Advanced Work Packaging, I will provide the definition in just a moment. It's a process that helps to better implement construction projects by involving all parties at the beginning of the project and utilizing lean concepts in construction. And so we had a very strong industry advisor team, and the desired outcome that we had for this study was to first understand how the culture can drive success in our projects, recognize means to understand and measure culture. I will discuss measuring culture in just a moment. What does it mean? And also to understand how culture can positively affect through leadership, and how leadership can foster the right culture for the project. Okay, so first, why culture matters. We need to look at the history of AWP projects that were funded by CII. First, CII funded a couple of studies to understand the foundation of AWP. What is AWP? What are the principles? How we can implement it? Then they start to fund studies to look at process enhancement, how we can utilize AWP to enhance processes, and then they went to the implementation. But in all of these studies that they had funded, they had one problem. There were resistance among some of the team members regarding change and implementing AWP projects. So there was a cultural issues and cultural problems they were interested to solve. And that's why they contacted us. And if we look at the organization culture, it helps us to understand why do things happen the way that they do. And we can have an individually distributed control culture that can lead to chaos, or we can have hierarchical distributed control, command and control, that provide a more structured way of solving problem and helps to have more coordination in the project. So we have the organizational culture, we have department culture, and we have project culture. And for project success, critical factors affecting project outcome, typically in surveys that we distribute and collect data from completed projects, we focus on people who are involved, how these people are collaborating together, communication among them, processes that happen in the project, and also which type of technologies they are going to use. All of these factors can help a project to develop a sustainable culture. And typically when you present potential culture change in a project, everyone would say that, yeah, we want change, we love change. But when you go to them to implement change, you will see resistance. Because people they like to stick to the old way of doing business. They don't want to change themselves. So that's one of the problems that we have. And we wanted to understand how we can address this culture change, how we can encourage it in the projects. And so the culture, we can look at it as an iceberg. The behavior that we see, for example, if we go to a class, we see that everyone is quiet, everyone listening to the speaker or the instructor in the classroom. So that's a behavior that we see, right? But there are so many things that led to that behavior. There are attitudes, there are intentions, there are cultural values and the belief that support such behavior, right? Another example, if you have a construction site that workers are very meticulous in following safety instructions, and they believe that that's the way of doing the business in that project. So that's the behavior that we see, but there are so many other things that lead to that behavior, that support such a behavior. These are the things we are interested to study in our project. And some of the statements on the right side that you can see, these are the statements came from previous funded CII studies. And all of them mentioned culture and communication to be significant drivers of successful AWP implementation in projects. So for global adoption of AWP, and also to implement it in United States, North America, Europe, and Asia, South America, we need to achieve maturity in our culture for AWP projects. And our goal was that how we can define it, how we can develop some tools to help us to assess if we are mature to implement AWP in that project or not. So that was one of the goals of this study. And we will get into that last week when we were at Yonsei University. We were establishing the collaboration between Purdue and their university to see that how we can collect data from Asian projects completed in the South Asia and East Asia and compare it with North America projects that we have in our database. And so the approach that we took to address this problem was to bring people from organizational psychology. So that was one of the strengths of our team. We didn't say that just a bunch of civil engineers get together and try to solve a problem related to culture. We need experts to help us to achieve that, right? And we also had a construction management view from our department and industry panels who provided field experience for us. And before starting to delve deeper into the project and try to develop some tools to measure culture and understand how we can improve culture assessment and implementation in the project, we ask our industry partners to share their experiences with us. So we started to do some case study. We told them, please tell us a story about your successful cases and failed projects. We want to understand, how do you describe a failed project? How do you describe a successful project? What do you mean by a successful culture implementation? One of the, we had multiple cases, but the case that I'm going to present here comes from ExxonMobil. And here is also a statement. I cannot exactly define it, but I know it when I see it. That's from the Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart. And that's really important about the culture, because culture is intangible, right? Culture is something that we observe it, we feel it, but it's difficult to measure it, right? How do we measure it? So that was a difficult job we wanted to address in this project. But we know that these people who comes from industry have lots of experience. They know it when I see it, right? So we asked them to share some case study with us. This case study was a over $2 billion project, a very successful EPC project in India. It was executed 2018 to 2023, and it was a full AWP implementation. They had exceptional safety performance, so it was a very successful project. And they deployed leading-edge technologies, and we wanted to understand why it was successful. And one of the main project managers shared this key message with us, and this is the message they wrote before starting the project. They said that we have a goal. We want to be the best project ever. That's our goal, right? So all of us are team players. All of us want to be successful. We will work as partners, and they define it. What do they mean by working as partners? We will establish positive culture from day one about safety and mutual respect, sharing information, and many other things. And we will engineer, procure, and construct with the end in mind. So that's the AWP concept, right? That you try to have end in mind and then start working on your project and develop work packages. And also, decisions will be driven by the highest overall value. So while our industry partners were sharing their experiences, we had our psychology team who were interviewing these people, and it was like a therapy session that you go to your therapist, you lay on bed and start telling stories about your childhood. So we were asking this question from our industry partners to see that how we can identify cultural factors that can help us to define culture. And as you can see, we had leadership, communicate the needs, voice inclusive atmosphere. These are some of the factors we identified. And we kept going on. We came up with some factors such as innovation-driven, goal enforcement, receptiveness of new working ways of working, also the leaders' clear communication on goals, norm to accept the change, right? So these are all of the factors that we could identify as we were talking with these people. And this was an international project. They had teams from different countries, from the different national culture, national cultural background, from the different organizational culture, and all of them work together to make it very successful. So boundary spanning and incentive and rewards was also one of the main factors. And also information, how people are sharing information, that was also a big factor. So if we had data utilization, we found it to be very important, and Haley, we will get into that when we have our actual data collection. And this was an example of the pipe fabrication and how they implemented lean concept. So they prefabricated pipes somewhere else, and they have in-time delivery for their project. So after reviewing some of the cases, we developed our research method approach. First, we did the background review, and we look at different cultural theories that exist in the literature. And then we created a culture measurement tool that Haley will explain it. We validated our tool for assessing culture by distributing to more than 100 project managers. And we have a data collection about the project performance, both on the cost, schedule, quality, and performance metrics, and also cultural aspect. And we also we analyzed the data and came up with the best practices for owners, how they can implement, how they can perform in their projects to enforce a successful project. So I give the scene to Haley so she can explain how the tool was developed. Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction, Dr. Ismaili. Hi, I am Haewon Seo. I go by Haley. I'm a PhD student in Civil Engineering Department, major in Construction Engineering. So as he mentioned, there were various background of people in RT405, from owner, GC, suppliers, consultants, and us, researchers. And RT405 team conducted intensive in-person and online meeting as well. This is the picture that we did meeting in Purdue, and also one in Chevron headquarters in Houston. So we came into the one room with the one goal: how to leverage culture for AWP success. So we started by questioning ourselves, by reminiscing their own experience of AWP projects. We discussed what happened to the project, who influenced the project, or what could have done better in which way. And also we added the organizational psychology view on that discussion and could drive these factors that we can measure AWP culture. It's in 4 dimensions: leadership, coordination, value, and norm. Leadership is how leaders manage people and motivate them. Coordination is how meanings are shared within the group and people get involved with the things done. And value is what people care about for the work-wise in a project. And norm is what is expected in behavior-wise in the group. And we delve deeper into that 4 dimension into 17 sub-factors, which you can see from the vision casting to the adherence to the industry standard. These are the definition and description of these 17 sub-factors. So our goal is measuring culture, so we have to rank it into the hard numbers. So we adopted a technique called 5-level behaviorally anchored rating scale called BARS, which has 5 levels, which is level 1 has no plan, level 2 represents on-plan, level 3 have schedules but with unforeseen events, level 4 usually satisfied, level 5 which has a great alignment. So for example of the incentive and rewards, which means how a leader provides praise, incentives, and reward for compliance with expectation in the leadership dimension. In the level 1, project leaders actively incentivize non-compliance to the project plans by rewarding project team members that work in other ways. And level 5 is project leader utilize incentive program across the entire project and regularly reward team members at every level. Yes, so we defined the culture and we could rank it. And now it's time to question to us, is it validate to use? Right, with the fundamental question that the bars that we created could measure the AWP culture, we conducted a survey with 2 main objectives. First, should we measure culture? Second, does culture predict anything? So people used to say when talk about culture, I feel it when I say it, but it's hard to define it. Even though they could define the culture with various terminology, could they lead it to the hard numbers to track it? And when people talk about culture, it's strategy for breakfast, and it's really important. So what? We have to know why and what. So what does the culture predict anything? And does our tool drag any result? So we recruited 142 working professionals in construction industry who participated in AWP project and also the general construction project, and asked about their project culture experience with their performance and work experience. And this is a result that we got, which I'm going to introduce at the next slide. So first, we could drag the culture into two shapes. So with that 17 items, we conducted effective factor analysis and could see that culture is divided into two groups. And one group is, we call it vertical alignment, and it represents why people do their work. It goes from incentive rewards, vision casting to the adjustment behaviors. And we could see that why people do their work is highly correlated to work quality in terms of the individual work quality and performance, and as well as it's highly correlated with work experience, such as leader-member exchange, job satisfaction, and psychological safety. And also, the other dimension, what we call horizontal alignment, it's about how people do their work. And it has the highest correlation with work quantity of team and individuals. And it also showed the high correlation with job satisfaction and workflow in work experience. With this survey, we could answer the two questions from the earlier question that we had in mind. First, should we measure culture? Yes. This tool captures important and distinctive aspects of culture in the construction industry. Second, does culture predict anything? Yes. We could see how the performance and work experience could be related to the culture in each dimensions. So these are what we can get. Culture is complex, it's multifaceted, and each dimension should be considered in different way. And we can measure culture with these bars, also in AWP, and also in general construction. Now, here's the next step. So we define how to measure culture, and we have to delve deeper which culture factors affect each stage of the construction. So to answer that question, we come up with the matrix from the previous publication of Construction Owner Association of America and CII about the project performance matrix and AWP adoption matrix. We listed those 100 of matrix and had the activity with our more than 20 industry partners and ranked them. Is it important? Is it available? And also, who can we ask the data? Who is the best person to handle the data? So these are the example. This is the example of the spreadsheet that we worked on. So we marked the availability, important, and the role. Yeah, everybody consented the role should be project manager. We revised the sentence with the preferred terminology. And finally, we could make the survey, which asks about project performance in AWP adoption in 68 questions. Each of these questions does not specifically ask about project performance or AWP adoption measuring. It should be formalized and be calculated. So we distribute the survey and conducted interview. And these are the example of the survey, it also asks about the hard numbers and also asks about the ranking or yes and no. So it's multi-type answer survey. And after the project managers or someone responsible for this survey answer, we conducted an interview to fill out the missing data. And also, if the one could not answer, we asked someone else, and we tried to follow back and fill the survey as much as possible. And then later on, their team members answered the culture survey, which is bars, that I introduced at the earlier. This is an example of the culture survey. So the key finding. I know that this is everyone's favorite part. I'll go fast, but pinpoint the important things. So thankfully, we could receive 29 performance survey, which is project performance and AWP adoption that I showed as a survey 1. But unfortunately, 4 were identical projects that we had to delete it. But as a good aspect, we could cross-check the data quality. I conducted 22 interviews. Delve deeper, got to listen their case studies. At the end, we could evaluate 14 projects with 17 cultural responses. So at some project data, there were several cultural responses. Unfortunately, a project didn't have culture, so had to drop it, and 3 projects had skewed response, which they ranked 5 for the every factors. This is an overview of people who participate in the survey. For survey 1, it was majorly project manager, project engineers, AWP manager, and CEO. And for the culture survey, consultant, engineer, project manager, AWP manager were part of the culture survey. So from this 68 question, we could define the critical correlation with these 4 categories: data collection, path of construction, material management, and scheduling. Data collection is about getting data, the important data in a document. And as you can see, it's highly correlated with value norm coordination, and I'll go detail at the next slide. So what do I mean by data collection? So as you can see, I highlighted in yellow. When people had high uphold psychological safety, which means when they felt that their opinions are welcomed and reflected in the team, and the team had more agreement on objective and goals, the minimum data required for disciplines of each AWP stage were documented very well. And also, when people were adherent to the industry standard, they are more likely measure the out of sequence work activity and hours to track their progress. Yes. And second is path of construction. Path of construction is conducted in the early stage of the construction, and it provides the roadmap of the entire construction process. So it's really important. And as you can see, it's highly correlated with value and norm. So what do I mean by value and norm? So in the value and innovation driven, what I mean by innovation driven is that when people accept a new way of the working and technology, that's the definition of innovation driven. So when they had low innovation driven attitude, they had more practical session for POC. So it highlights the importance of accepting the new way of the working, right? And also, when people use commonality of the terminology, when people use the terminology commonly at the early stage of POC, is shown in this graph. It's minus only because I put POC development stage into 1 to 4 rank, and the number 1 means the pre-feed. So it shows that the more people conducted POC stage at the earlier stage, which is pre-feed, they had more common attitude to use of the terminology. Next is material management. Material management is handling and controlling the material for the efficiency of the project, and it's highly correlated with the leadership and coordination. For the detail, when leader consistently keep up and share the information about the resources to the people, it is more likely that materials arrive on time from the vendors. It's obvious, right? And when the leader had that attitude, they adopted the CWP tagging strategy, which is a new technology. And also, when the team had agreement and alignment on contribution and expectation, they were less likely of the AWP delay due to the material unavailability in the construction project. Everything makes sense, right? And the last thing is schedule. Schedule is about checking the plan, that whether they are stick to what they had planned at the earlier. And as you can see, there are so many items related to the schedule. We say time equals money, but when we talk about scheduling construction, imagine how many dollars are involved in the scheduling, right? So when you want to handle schedule and the cost, it's really important to think about the culture. So about the schedule, it's highly correlated with the CWP completion percentage on time from leadership accountability and uphold psychological safety, which I explained earlier, and the receptiveness of the team, the new way of the working, and information sharing parties. This is really important because CWP completion is done in the early stage of construction, which deal with the big things like structure or the foundation, and it impacts the later schedule of the construction. So if they complete the schedule on time, CWP completion on time, it impacts the rest of the project. And so many culture items are related to this. Also, IWP delay due to the RFI is highly correlated to with the mostly leadership items, vision casting, boundary spanning, leadership accountability, and commonality use of the terminology and innovation driven. So if these cultural factors are positive, they are less likely to have the delay in IWP due to the RFI. So he's going to share about the research.
Yes. Thank you so much, Haley. Thank you for wonderful presentation and the work that you have done on this project. So to just summarize what we have done, culture, as we said, is something more subjective. So we developed a tool and validated the tool to measure and assess culture. The significance of our tool is that it depends on some descriptive scale that you can compare and see what a good leadership looks like, what a good vision casting looks like, or communication practices. So, and we also conducted a study to see that how different cultural factors impact performance of the project, right? A schedule and other factors that just Haley mentioned. And so you can pinpoint the best cultural practices that you want to adopt for your project to achieve your performance, the performance that matters to you. If the schedule matters to you, you can focus on that part, right? So that's the strength of it. And so for the call to action that we had at CII conference, we said that you can be objective related to your culture, be purposeful, organize and engage a core group to achieve better performance in your projects. You can evaluate your AWP practices and improve with a SMART goals plan that shown here. So at the end of this project, Haley also received the award of the best graduate students for the CII. That's a very prestigious award, and I'm very excited for her. Haley is my first PhD student at Purdue. That when I joined here, she also joined my group, so I'm very excited for her, and we are looking forward for her to graduate next year or a year after, and she's looking for academic jobs. So she has been trained very well in different kind of projects and research studies. For the next couple of minutes that we have time, I would like to share another study that Haley is working, because this CII study was only a side project for Haley. Haley's research is mainly focuses on using exoskeleton and also application of wearable technologies to study human decision making and behavior in construction. So we have a very short presentation about another study that she's involved. And because this presentation was about the CII study, we thought maybe for 5 or 7 minutes, perhaps we can focus on some of the results of Haley's main research, PhD research study. Okay, so musculoskeletal disorder is a big problem in construction because workers are carrying heavy materials. They have repetitive motion, and also they have to work in awkward postures, and this causes many problems. One of the main problems that we have is related to back injuries. So one of the solutions to overcome this problem is using exoskeletons, that is a wearable structure device that augments and assists physical activity through mechanical interaction with the body. We can have active or passive exoskeletons. For our current study, we have a passive exoskeleton that we use from Autobach. And as you can see, the market for exoskeleton is going to explode in the coming years. And so in our study, that Haley is going to talk about, we focused on impact of wearing exoskeleton on cognitive performances, because there are many studies that look at impact of wearing exoskeleton on physical improvement, but how about cognition? That's something that has not been studied very well in past literature. And Haley is going to share the result of her research very briefly about this. I hope we have time, Professor Hastak, for this short presentation.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That sounds very interesting.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Esmaili. So I'm going to continue. So when we talk about adopting new technology, researchers stress the need for a well-rounded approach, considering different viewpoints, as our goal is investigate its diverse effect and consequences and provide the suggestion for the future. So in this context, there is still need for the study to examine the cognitive impact of exoskeleton on construction workers, because they are exposed at hazardous condition and they have to make split-second decision from the dynamic environment. Given the substantial impact on brain-body interaction on human action, if exoskeleton place higher cognitive demand and lead to psychological fatigue, it could potentially undermine their long-term biomechanical benefit. So with this context, our research group wanted to define how wearing exoskeleton impact workers' cognitive process, particularly in hazard identification tasks when they are tired. So the hypothesis is there's no significant difference in brain activation during hazard identification before and after conducting the arduous work with and without exoskeleton. These are the type of sensors that I applied in my experiment, and I'm going to share only the FNIR data of the pilot study. For now, I am conducting experiment with legitimate construction workers, and it will be shared probably this winter. So these are the framework of the research. It's conducted in 2 days, and participants had to show up 2 days. And there were 2 major jobs they had to conduct, which is cognitive task, which I will explain at the next slide, and the physical task called material manual handling. So to define the cognitive progress of the workers, I focused to measure the dorsal prefrontal area, which is very front area, which is known for its involvement for goal-directed behavior, decision-making, and problem-solving. So this is the part when you are too focused or too tired, you might have a headache, this area. So that's the area I measured. And by utilizing a sensor called functional near-infrared spectroscopy, which estimates cortical hemodynamic activity of prefrontal head. This is the configuration. So I recruited students, and I see some of them here, and they were asked to identify the type of hazard, especially fall hazard, from the image that they were shown. They were asked to do this activity at 2 days before and after doing the repetitive lifting task. The 5 types of fall hazard are called fall rest system, ladders, elevated platform, unprotected edges, and uncovering openings. They were asked to watch 7 different images at each time, which were tested by 3 safety managers. So as you can see on the right side, they were asked to watch image for 30 seconds and had to verbally explain what they have defined, and researchers had to take notes on it. And after that, they watched the image again. And their answers were scored by a hazard identification index. The total number of the answers that they did correctly was measured and divided by the total number of identified hazards. And this is the physical task called manual maturing handling. Participant had to lift concrete block for 300 times, which weighed 18 or 36 pounds in 6 minutes under the tempo of the metronome in 60 adagio. And as Dr. Esmaili explained, this is a type of exoskeleton I applied for the experiment called passive exoskeleton by Autobug, a German company. So this is a participant demographic. All 12 were involved, and those were male participants. And their experience in construction site was in average 3 years. Unfortunately, 2 had to drop due to the procedure failure and the data failure. However, all of them had no issue with the back, leg, ankle, or side. This is a result. Interestingly, participants responded that with exoskeleton, their body fatigue after lifting was reduced compared to without exoskeleton, except for the elbow part. This is the area is being actively studied to follow up. You can check in the citation. I can introduce you to this minimized time. And people answered positive result of the exo usability test, that they could move freely in the range of motion, and they thought it's safe to use. This is a NASA TLX, which represents the perceived mental fatigue during the cognitive task. And as you can see, interestingly, mental, physical, temporal demand, according to the participant, decreased during the cognitive task after the physical activity, and also frustration and effort decreased. Interestingly, performance they felt, it increased. And also the hazard identification index showed that with exoskeleton, it increased a little bit for the performance-wise. This is a result of the brain activation of the dorsolateral prefrontal area. And I want to highlight just 2 things. So when you see the box plot of the figure 17, it shows the variation of the prefrontal areas oxyhemoglobin concentration. And interestingly, without exoskeleton, before and after lifting, the cognitive task has statistical difference, which means without exoskeleton. So without exoskeleton, people's brain engage in different way. And also, after the physical task, with and without exoskeleton show the statistical difference as well, which is 0.013. On the table 2, I highlighted it to the red. You can see that at the brain region without exoskeleton, precognitive task, DLPFC, show the positive result in average, including left and right. However, at the post-cognitive task, which is after the physical task, they had the negative values. However, in the case of DLPFC with exoskeleton condition, before lifting, it has a positive result. However, after lifting, also it showed a positive result, except for the right side. I specifically mentioned left and right because left and right DLPFC are engaged in different functions, as left is involved in logical, structured, and rule-based processing, and right is involved in special, contextual, and adaptive thinking. And also, it tests the difference between left and right after the lifting task, the cognitive task. And this is a brain functional connectivity result, which shows the correlation of the left and right function. Only thing I want to highlight is the red box. So without exoskeleton, after lifting, so during the post-cognitive task, you can see the most frequent and the highest correlation, which is start into the yellow. Then others show the similar range. It shows that intensive exercise changed the neurotransmitter level and blood flow regulation with increased recruitment of neural firing pattern because participants had to more physical work and they had no support of the exoskeleton. So it aligned with the previous study that compensatory mechanism worked to maintain the cognitive performance due to the fatigue. So with exoskeleton, we could see that the hazard identification score increased and the DLPFC oxygen hemoglobin rate was stable except for the right part. We could see that exoskeleton can prevent the cognitive fatigue, and however, it cannot completely prevent the fatigue because the right DLPFC was decreased to the -degree. However, we can see that with the exoskeleton, it reduced the physical fatigue and it helped the less demand on cognition for hazard identification. So contribution of this study is that we tested the acceptability of exoskeleton beyond the usability, and we applied the FNIRS for defining cognitive impact of exoskeleton, and we could see the interaction between physical and mental fatigue. So this is the result and the reference. And if you have a question, I am happy to answer it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Haley. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone. So we are happy to answer any question that you have, and thank you for people who are online. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for Professor Hastak for giving us this platform to present both research studies related to Haley's PhD. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Ismaili and Haley. It was where we got 2 for 1, so that's excellent. We got more value out of the seminar. And Haley, really appreciate you sharing your research that you're conducting on exoskeleton, and also for sharing the results that you all got from the AWP work that you did for CII. So both excellent presentations, really appreciate that. Let me open, we have a few minutes, so let me open the floor for questions. And Paul, can you channel the questions coming from the audience? I can see a little bit, but not all. Yes, go ahead, please. Introduce yourself and then ask the question.
My name is Jacob Johnson. Thank you for your presentation today. Both of them, they were great. My question refers to the...
Could you push the microphone?
Sorry about that. Great presentation today, like I said. Both of them were very great. Going to the first presentation you had about culture, what trends did you guys see in industry that kind of led to this research study that you guys did?
Yes, thank you so much. Very interesting question. And so for the trends, first about the type of the research conducted. So if we go back to the CII timeline of the research that they have done. So this is how they focus on AWP. This was the first culture study to better understand how the culture impact AWP adaptation. And we found out based on the interviews, we had detailed interview with multiple multiple project members on each project, and we interviewed them to better understand how they feel about AWP, about culture, and many other factors. What we found is that AWP gets lots of resistance, especially from engineering side, because the engineers, the way that they are paid and the way that their work is evaluated is a little bit different from the way that AWP expect them to perform the job. For example, engineers love to finish the design from 0 to 100 and then give it to the contractors or constructors. But AWP asks them to do this job in packages, work packages, and they should be on the call and develop the design for small packages. And some of the engineers didn't like it. And they also said that the amount of time they put for AWP projects is a little bit more. So that was one of the feedback that we got from the interview. So one of the people who are resisting against this are engineers. And so some people also mentioned that in some AWP projects, the team stick to the old way of doing business, right? So they don't change themselves. It's called AWP, but actually it's not AWP in some aspects. Data exchange was another very important trend that people said that in successful projects, you see that there is a centralized cloud that people are sharing data about material delivery, about the RFIs and many other information they are sharing. But in projects that they were struggling and they were not as matured as the successful projects, they didn't have that platform for data exchange. So based on the trend, I think AWP is gaining traction. People are learning more about it. And it's better perhaps to start with some smaller projects to implement it and train your team to better understand the culture for AWP projects, and so they can adapt to that one. Just similar to design build projects. I mean, some years ago, maybe 30 years ago, the number of design build projects was a little bit limited, but it has started to change, right? And the culture typically is very different from design build type projects, right? But what people will learn by doing different projects, some people who are working with design build projects still hate it. The same way as AWP. Some people hate it and say that, hey, I really don't like this type of projects. It doesn't work. It just causes problem for us. But some people love it and they can make it very successful, just like the case study in India that we showed. So it depends. Maybe AWP is not for every project. Some companies are pushing this, but maybe another study that we suggested to CII to do is to understand which type of projects better suited for AWP. And then we focus on that and see that how we can develop some packages to change culture in those type projects, specifically related to the type of project. Thank you so much. Very good question.
Thank you very much, and thanks for that question as well. Do we have any other questions from the floor?
Sure.
Anybody online?
Thank you for your presentations today. My name is Ala. For the AWP presentation, I had one question. How did we overcome the resistance of AWP? And we mentioned that we did several surveys and questionnaires with the project managers. What type of projects did you work on? So, is there specific types of projects you worked on, or just like different ones? And did you saw a culture difference in projects between different countries, or is the behavior like the same between all countries?
I think Haley can answer this question. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes. So there were different type of projects that involved in this survey. Some of them are EPC owner managed. The delivery types were different, and that was the first question, right? And the second question was there any cultural difference?
I mean, like, is the projects are like renovation projects or like?
Okay, that's a good question. Yeah. Actually, except for the one project, every project started from the scratch, but only one project had the renovation process. But interestingly, the renovation process adopting AWP completed in a successful manner, and yeah, AWP works in both the new way and also the renovation way.
Yeah, and the scope of projects was chemical projects or oil and gas projects.
Oh, yes, yes. Majority of them are oil and gas project, as AWP was meant to implement from the oil and gas and chemical, but people start to implement in different types and trying to test and share the research right now these days in the conferences or the seminars right now. But the data that we can get are from oil and gas and chemistry, because as you know that construction projects last long, and as it takes lots of money, the amount of data could be shared are like very limited. And I think he wants to add on something.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, because the majority of our panel members were from oil and gas industry, Chevron, ExxonMobil, and things like that. So the portfolio that we have is mainly from oil and gas projects and EPC type projects. So engineering part is a big part of it. And you know, for when you have a work packages, typically that works for EPC projects very well, right? Yeah. But we are working to collect more data, as we said, from South Korea and China and other countries to compare culture among them. And that's a very good question, actually. One of the actually, one of the comments we got from CII is that this database that we have created is the largest AWP performance database that they have right now. They even ask for our surveys to be used with their members to collect such performance data from their completed AWP projects. So we think that this database has a potential to grow and include more projects, and hopefully we can get we can answer more questions and results from.
Yes. And regarding the culture difference between the nations, for example, the US, AWP has been mentioned for, let's say, like from like 13 years ago, and everyone now know what AWP is. And in the contract term, they have to adopt AWP no matter what. So AWP in US or US lead projects are implemented very well, but other countries like East Asia or like Russia or other places, or India, they're new to this system and they're trying to define the way they work because their culture where somehow are very vertical. They cannot reverse the managers. That's the culture that they have. So they're trying to modify the AWP in a way their culture works.
Yeah. So how did you overcome this resistance, and how did they overcome this resistance in projects?
One of the resistance, you know, when the top management decided to implement AWP, one of the comments we received was that you change or you change the people, right? So they were saying that if you are not going to implement it, we have to change you. So that was one of the messages came from the top management when they implement AWP. So sometimes it's a push from top that comes in and people have to implement it. So there might be some resistance, but there are some learning curve too, and you know, you just don't want to fail the company when they decide to implement AWP.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent set of questions, Ella. Thank you for that. Do we have any more questions from online or on the floor? Could you please put your mic on? Yeah, thank you.
Culture affects.
I don't think it is on. Just press the button once.
Is it audible? Am I audible now? Oh, I think it's on.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good.
Yeah. So you mentioned that culture can affect a project. So do you think like is it only for construction project? Because I think culture can affect any project in general. So how do you think, like, since the presentation was mostly based on, your study was also based on construction projects, so do you think we'll be able to extend the AWP approach to any project in general, or like, do we have any problems with that?
Thank you so much. So, yeah, a very good question. Actually, I answered it very quickly, then Haley can expand upon it. That's a very good comment. And many people in the CII conference, they also asked the same question that, so it's about AWP projects. Can be applied to other construction projects or not? That's a good question, but that's for further study. We need to validate it because the bars statement that we developed came from people who had AWP in their mind. We would say that what is a good leadership looks like for AWP projects. What is a good communication looks like for AWP projects. Level 1 through 5, describe it. And so you can benchmark yourself against those descriptions, right? So the same thing, when I know it, when I see it, I know it. So it's the same thing, but that's perhaps another step of the study and that can be implemented. And I think we have Majid from online.
Yes. Go ahead, Majid.
Hold on a second.
Majid, you're mute.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute. So I have two questions, one regarding the first presentation and second question for the second presentation, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So the first question is regarding the first presentation. It's related to the first question that was asked. So I have, the question is, how you mentioned that the AWP might not be suitable for every project. So the question would be, how do we determine that the project that the AWP can be used to on that project? Like, is it related to the size of the project or type of a project? Like, for example, mega projects or industrial projects, or the structure of the firm itself? How do you determine whether AWP would work on that project or not?
Thank you so much. So if you answer that question first, that's an ongoing question, and that's a very good question. And I hope CII fund us for another project so we can answer that question. We don't have the answer at this moment because we don't have any data. One of the ways that we can answer that question is that we looked at the performance of the projects based on those characteristics. For example, we develop a survey. We collect it from the completed projects, look at how well they perform in AWP projects, and then we benchmark it against non-AWP projects. And then decide that, okay, for which type of projects AWP can be implemented more successfully. That's one solution. And also this can be a master thesis or some PhD research for some of the students. One of the reasons we presented these two research topics and also mention some future studies is that to provide some guidelines for potential researchers in the crowd that they might be interested to study that. But we don't have answer to that question at this moment.
You had a second question? We lost Majid there for a while. Well, I think, there are a number of questions. I have a
Sorry, the
whole
host
sheet of
has to give me
questions.
permission to unmute. I couldn't unmute myself.
Oh, I see. Okay, go ahead.
So my second question is regarding the second presentation. It was really interesting. So I'm curious about when you collected the data, you mentioned that you collected the data with and without the exoskeleton. So when you did that first session, like when you collected without the exoskeleton, did you collect the data like on one session with and without? So I'm curious about the perception of the worker, like, for example, when they use the device to lift the objects. Like when you remove the object, they have the perception that they might have the force to lift it easily, but they might have an injury because of that perception. Did you examine that, like,
Yes.
problem?
Yeah. So all the participants had to participate 2 days, 2 different days with and without exoskeleton. And to be honest, everyone had hard time to schedule the twice of the participation day. And to give the last impression about the exoskeleton, I randomized the exoskeleton day. So some people were exoskeleton on day 1, or then others were did EXO on day 2. So to minimize those impressions, there was some techniques to implement it. I think that's a great question. Thank you.
And yes, I think Haley also asked about a Borg scale that after an with or without exoskeleton to see that when they have a comfort level. And Haley, maybe if you bring that slide, perhaps you can show to Majid how it works. And so if we also had a scale to compare their comfort. And as you can see here, the black bold line shows without EXO, and the dotted line shows with EXO. So, for example, their neck or shoulder pain was much less with EXO in comparison without EXO. So that's one of the data points that we have collected.
I think that is a very interesting graph of survey results that you just shared. I had a couple of questions. So I think we are running out of time. So Majid, again, thank you for those couple of questions. Let me, as I always do, close with the questions I have. And the first question, let me start with the AWP. A very interesting study. We often don't think about the impact of culture, but your research and study has really brought that out, that culture is important in making things happen. So my question was that, when you say AWP, we are trying to align the construction schedule with the engineering schedule, procurement schedule, and other schedule, right? So, of course, multiple parties are involved, and each of these parties would come with first of all, their own agenda for the project, and second, their own culture. So, based on your research, what did you find in terms of, within an organization, you can manipulate the requirements as far as the culture is concerned, right? Fire them, hire them, as you said. But what about across organizations that are actually contributing to the AWP?
Thank you so much. An excellent question. And actually, this came up during our CII presentation too, that people mentioned that culture from whom? I mean, is it from suppliers? Is it from subcontractor? Is it from the contractor, owner, or engineering staff? So, yes, the culture can be different for each of these parties. But one of the way to overcome that and come up with the culture in the project is that we have early involvement of different parties. So they have multiple meetings at the beginning of the project. So they set the shared goals together, similar to the successful project from India that we have from ExxonMobil, that people had that shared statement and a partnership agreement at the beginning of the project. They said that this is what we want to achieve, this is how we are going to achieve it. And that's one way to do it. But based on the comments we got from our organizational psychologist partners, was that at the end, when people get together in one project, that project has its own culture too, right? So we have organizational cultures, but they come together and they form a new paradigm, a new ecosystem. Just like the team members, if we have a research team that we get together, the different PhD students from different teams, they start working together. They have different culture that they work in their teams, but they come together and they develop an ecosystem that becomes a new culture. That is a mixture of those cultures. So when we collected the data about the culture in completed projects, we collected from multiple people. We didn't rely only on one person. Project manager only provided performance data. After that, we contacted other people to see that what was their perception about the culture in the project. And then we compared them.
So just a quick follow-up on that. So did you find that, AWP was more successful from a culture standpoint, IPD versus design bid build, or design build, or take any of the other delivery options?
Yes, that's an excellent question. Unfortunately, our data set is not that large to make those statistically compare those differences, unfortunately. And we are looking forward to expand the database. And we didn't have any IPD projects, but that's a very valid question. Hopefully, as we are expanding the size of the database, then we can compare to see that which one are more successful. Another potential bias that we have in our data is that people sometimes are tended to share their successful projects too, right? So sometimes the database, if it's very unsuccessful projects, sometimes maybe people do not respond to our request to share the data. So that's a potential bias that we might have, and we are also trying to, by expanding the amount and the data collection, hopefully we overcome that. But we didn't have any comparison based on the project delivery side.
Okay. So let me close the session with a question to Haley. And Haley, that was a very nice second presentation as well, as I mentioned. So, I have a number of questions, but I'll just ask one given the time constraint. And that was that you were mentioning when the headgear was being used for data collection, and you're asked them certain questions. So were the questions related to, were they supposed to look for something in the image, as in safety concerns, or did you not point that out to them that they were to look for safety concerns? I mean, what was the setting for that analysis?
Okay. They had to wear that brain sensor called behaviour from the beginning till the end, and we mark the event. So during the hazard identification process, which I call the cognitive task, they had to watch image as shown in the image that I pulled up. So they had to sit up on a desk and had to have specific distance with the monitor by putting their chin on the chin holder, and had to see the image, randomized image for 30 seconds and define the hazards. So during their watching and staring, the brain activation was measured and it was dragged into the data, the box plot that I presented at the end of the slide. So that's how I got the data.
It was a purposeful task. So Haley asked them to search for hazards.
Well, thank you both very much. We have exceeded our time quite a bit, but this was quite an interesting set of questions that everybody had. And I'm sure there are many more questions to be asked. So I'll encourage those who are in the studio and others to continue asking questions. And those who are online, I want to thank you all for participating. Let's give them a big round of applause. You can open your mics now and give them a big round of applause.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the audience and also Professor Hastek for giving us this opportunity. And thank you so much for your mentorship. I mean, from the beginning of the project that you helped us with the CII study, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And also thanks for Haley for being here. She's one of the future faculty members, so we are looking for her success too. Really appreciate it. Everyone, have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.